Hey everybody, welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. Let's talk about the finale of Game of Thrones and all the little details and callbacks to other episodes you might have missed. But first, here's a spoiler warning for the finale. And I want to know, what did you guys think of how the show ended? Let me know in the comments below. There were a few cool new details starting with the opening credits. Of course, there's massive damage to the Red Keep after last week's episode.
I am not here to be Queen of the Ashes.
The throne room is slightly destroyed with the pointed star of the seven gods hollowed out. I think this symbolizes that the old ways are done and the wheel is finally broken, or at least almost broken. Also notice the map room is split where we saw it break in the last episode. The split is right on the neck of Westeros, symbolizing that the North is an independent country. Not an Easter egg or anything, but how cool is this shot of Daenerys? She may have gone insane or believed too much in her own hype, but she's always gotten the best poses in the show. The episode starts mostly from Tyrion's point of view. When he discovers his siblings' bodies, the theme that plays is a variation of the Reigns of Castamere. That's the Lannister song we've heard a few times in the series.
Sweet boys, those I'm not a soul to hear.
Daenerys gives your standard mad dictator speech to the troops.
All
remaining systems will bow to the First Order!
And it's crazy how quickly the Unsullied and Dothraki went from seeming like good guys to being absolutely terrifying. I do think that Daenerys' heel turn was a little rushed, and we could have seen a few more episodes to show her dissent and how she justifies her own actions. But this is how a lot of dictatorships start. No one ever believes they're a villain, and people always start off with the best of intentions. Except Euron. He was always horrible. Daenerys recites part of Khal Drogo's speech from Season 1. Which she also repeated to the Dothraki in Season 6. I thought it was heartbreaking when Tyrion threw away his handpen because it was such a tender moment when she originally gave it to him. Remember, being Hand of the King was the happiest Tyrion had ever been, and it meant the world to him that Daenerys believed in him so much. That, and as he finally confesses, he was in love with her.
I love her too.
Jon quotes Maester Aemon.
Love is the death of duty.
The Maester says this when Jon wants to leave the Night's Watch.
Love is the death of duty.
Now remember, the Maester was actually a Targaryen who walked away from the throne, so went to Daenerys' dad instead. He even dropped this little piece of prophecy.
A Targaryen, alone in the world. It's a terrible thing.
And I love the parallels here between Jon and Ned Stark. Ned was also put in a position where he had to choose between duty and politics. He could have just exposed Cersei's incest, but instead he warned her so she could save her children from Robert's wrath. She struck first and labeled him a traitor. In a way, this foreshadows Season 8, when Tyrion tried to give her the chance to save her unborn baby.
Doesn't mean your baby has to die.
Then Daenerys finally sees the Iron Throne, just like her vision in the House of the Undying. In that vision, she's called away to a hut where she might be visiting the afterlife, where she meets Khal Drogo and Rhaego, her son. She meets them after walking through a wall of ice, which clearly foreshadowed Jon Snow. So in this episode, she's interrupted by her lover, Jon Snow, who then sends her to the afterlife. There are a lot of similarities between Jon and Dany over the seasons, so many that we made a whole video about it. But here's a new one. They were both stabbed in the heart by people they trusted to remove them from power. There's also a parallel to Dany's death in Egrets. They both die from chest wounds while looking into Jon's eyes. I think the real loser in this episode is Drogon. He lost his brothers and his mom. And he has a keen sense of political spite, though, when he burns the Iron Throne. They say later that Drogon went east. I would like to think that there are still dragons way east of Essos and that he went there to join his other kind. Then we get a time jump with a bit of much-needed comic relief from Ed Martully. Remember, he also gave us this comedy gem from Season 3. And then Tyrion forms the Electoral College after democracy is laughed out of the dragon pit. Hey, what's that? Is that a bottle of water? How long was this time jump? Anyways, Tyrion says that stories unite people, and he's right. After all, Game of Thrones is a story that's brought all kinds of people together for years, so we could all have something in common to complain about. He gives Bran the title Bran the Broken.
All hail Bran the Broken.
which is in line with some of his ancestors like Bran the Builder and Bran the Burner. Then, the big unexpected twist, Bran becomes ruler of Westeros.
We serve at your pleasure, King Bran the Broken.
Personally, I dig it. I think making the omnipotent guy with no personal ambition and a lot of free time king is a good way to go. But what about you? Tell me in the comments. Who should sit on the Iron Throne? Bran also slips that he already knew that he would become king.
Why do you think I came all this way?
The show hasn't really addressed how well Bran understands the future. We know that he saw flashes of it in his visions, like the dragon flying over King's Landing. But now, apparently, he's sorted out his brain and just knows everything that will happen. But then, maybe it's a Doctor Strange and Endgame situation where if he tells people the outcome, it won't happen? But if time is a flat circle and everything that happens will happen, why wouldn't Bran just tell everyone what was going on? And what's the point of prayer if God already has a plan for everyone? Sorry. Existential rabbit hole. Back to these threads. Tyrion goes to see Jon, reminiscent of Varys visiting Ned in the dungeons in Season 1. Then Tyrion calls back to this line.
The world will always need a home for bastards and broken men.
All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes.
A lot of people thought it should be Jon who was on the Iron Throne since he's the rightful heir, but Game of Thrones has always been the anti-Lord of the Rings. Instead of ending with the Ranger becoming a king, the king becomes a Ranger. Now, one question I have been hearing is that if Jon didn't kill the Night King or become king, why did the Lord of Light want to bring him back? Well, he was still instrumental in beating the White Walkers. He rallied the North to the cause and helped retake Winterfell with a lot of help from Sansa, which is why Arya returned home to ultimately end the Long Night. Grey Worm sails for the Isle of Noth, where Missandei was from. They have no weapons or violence on Noth, so it should be easy for the Unsullied to conquer and burn it to the ground. I'm kidding. Arya sails west like she hinted she would in a previous season.
But what's west of Westeros?
Again, there's a parallel here to Return of the King, which ends with all of the mystical characters sailing off to paradise, except Arya, on a ship that I hope is either named Catelyn or Nymeria, is sailing off to a new adventure. Or they'll all die of thirst. Brienne, who's now the head of the Kingsguard, fills out the rest of Jaime's deeds in the Book of Brothers. Remember, Joffrey teased Jaime about his accomplishments back in Season 4.
Someone forgot to write down all your great deeds.
Then we get the first small council meeting of this new order, and there's a few callbacks to previous seasons here. Sam, who skipped several grades to become the Grand Maester, reveals the story within a story. This calls back to Season 7.
What would you call it then?
Possibly something a bit more poetic?
Again, we have an anti-Lord of the Rings moment here.
And the Lord of the Rings by Frodo Baggins.
Instead of the little people writing the story from their point of view, the dwarf Tyrion gets left out completely. Bronn, who's now Master of Coin, is concerned about the kingdom's brothels.
All the best brothels burned down.
And this is kind of a nod to a previous Master of Coin, Littlefinger, who became rich from owning brothels in King's Landing. Davos corrects Bronn's grammar, a nice nod to his former king, Stannis Baratheon.
Less enemies for us.
Fewer.
Tyrion begins the meeting by telling a joke that he tried to tell in Season 6.
I once brought a jackass and a honeycomb into a brothel.
I once walked into a brothel with a honeycomb and a jackass. The madam says...
And these are actually the last lines spoken in the whole series. Jon says goodbye to the Starks in a scene that recalls him saying goodbye to Arya in Season 1. Then he says hello to Ghost, so the internet can shut up about that one. Then there's a montage of the Starks walking toward their new destinies, which was kind of foreshadowed in this season's first teaser trailer, The Crypts. The last scene of the show directly mirrors the first scene, when the Rangers go north of the Wall to fight wildlings. Except now, the great evil has been defeated, and the Ranger is riding to join the free folk. Notice this small plant is growing, which I think indicates not only that winter is over, but also that magic is starting to fade. I've always thought that the presence of the White Walkers kept the North, the real North, so cold. So this is a sign that their magic has been broken, and we're moving into a new era. But what did you think, guys? Were you satisfied about the ending? Again, let me know in the comments. And if you're here for the first time, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.